Welcome to the BJJ Mental Coach Podcast. I'm your host, Gustavo Dantas, and today we have Andy Murasaki. Andy, he's an IBJJF Black Belt No Gi World Champion. For the past 3 years, he has been in the finals of the Gi division in the lightweight, middleweight, and medium heavy division. Very impressive. He's a very consistent competitor, young, 25 years old. He shared his journey of being born in Japan and how was his transition of moving to the United States when he was a teenager, 16, or speaking the language, to pursue his dream of making a living with jiu-jitsu. And even though he's young, he's 25, and usually I interview business owners, entrepreneurs, and a lot of them, my masters, let's say, crowd, and community leaders, and I have high performers as well. And it's always refreshing to hear, the younger generation, see where he's at mentally, emotionally, and he's in a very good place right now. And you're definitely going to see him keep rising and being one of the main competitors in the IBJJF circuit. He's doing really well. So I feel you're going to enjoy the interview. Also, talking about challenges, accepting challenges, leaving like he did, just left Japan to come to pursue as a teenager. It always takes courage to start a business, accepting challenges. Going with this theme, if you're listening in the Spotify or any other audio version, and if you don't know, we do have the video format that is on YouTube, the BJJ Mental Coach, and we'll have over 300 videos from interviews, vlogs, and matches, and all kinds of different things. And the website is thebjjmentalcoach.com. But there we have a show, kind of vlog, called The Diary of a Master. So this is the second season, and so far I have episodes 1 and 2. And what am I talking about? If you're listening or watching this for the first time, I accepted a challenge that I called the How High Can You Fly project. The idea of you accepting a big challenge in your life, and mine happens to be this one in jiu-jitsu. And let's see how high can you fly. So the idea is to compete in all 4 majors IBJJF tournaments, and not just be healthy to compete in all of them, but of course, if it's possible, try to win. So the first episode, I talk about my journey to show a little bit of the preparation and competition of the European. The second one depends, and I'm leaving this week to the Brazilian Nationals, the end of April. By the time you're listening or watching this, I'm most likely done with the tournament, or if not, I'm about to compete, and then I'm going to release, and after that, an episode about that journey. But the idea really is to inspire you to go after your authenticity. That's the common thread, the common word of all the ones that I mentioned: entrepreneurship, entrepreneurs and business owners, community leaders, and high performers that just want to be their best version, and they just want to go after, pursue what they want. And that's the idea. That's always the message that we try. In order to do that, you have to take some action. You have to be ready mentally and emotionally for those challenges, but you can absolutely make it happen. So I hope you enjoy the interview, and check out our YouTube channel if you haven't. Subscribe it, and the BJJmentalcoach.com. Andy, welcome to the podcast.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. It's been a while since I did the podcast, so I'm not nervous, but let's see how it goes.
So we're talking before we started, mentioning how usually the guests are entrepreneurs, business owners, high performers. So he fits on the high performer aspect of athletes, people who are thinking outside of the box, attempting different goals and dreams, and usually are people in the masters crowd that follow more my work. Mm-hmm. But with Andy, you're 25 right now?
Yes, I just turned 25 a week ago, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and the crazy thing, my son will be 25 in like what, like 2 months or so.
Wow.
So it's pretty wild. And so I want to talk a lot about the competition, your journey, but competition, high level. I consider you got very consistent from what I noticed. It's not by accident. You've been in the past 3 years, three finals of the worlds in three different weight classes. I was looking for your past 3 years. You had about 55 wins and about 10 losses, being some in an open class, and Tynan and Mika being the two main adversaries. And so I saw there was like about 40% ratio of submission and stuff too, just for the past 3 years. So that's very impressive, man. So let's talk about how jiu-jitsu showed up in your life. I know that you were born in Japan, so tell us more about it.
Yes, so my parents are Brazilian. They do have a like grandfather, grandmother that they were Japanese, but my parents were born in Brazil. They were Brazilians. And when they were around like 16, 17, they went to Japan. Their parents sent them to Japan to work, because back in the day that was very common. Like, you know, uh, you're in Brazil, you're not making money. It's hard to afford things with normal job, and they had like relatives in Japan. So they sent my parents to Japan so they could work and make money. That was the goal. But then my parents ended up just staying in Japan. And crazy thing is they didn't meet each other in Brazil. They met in Japan. So they met each other
Oh,
in
wow.
Japan. They met each other in Japan, and they both had like similar story, you know. And I believe from just trying to picture the whole scenario, I believe, my dad was kind of by himself in Japan, new culture, at a young age, and he probably felt lonely a lot. Then my mom on the other side, she probably felt the same way, right? Like she was there with her mom, but new culture, new country, she doesn't speak the language, doesn't know anyone. Food is very different. Everything is different, so she probably felt lonely too. So when they met each other, I think it was very quick. Like they found like their soulmate. And that's when they had me. I was born in Japan. I have a Brazilian passport because Japan doesn't allow dual citizen. And both of my parents are Brazilian, so I can't really be Japanese. In order for me to apply for a Japanese citizenship, either my dad or my mom had to be like a full Japanese. And that's not the case. They're Brazilians.
Gotcha.
But I was born in Japan, 2000, 2000, March 26th, born in Japan. Then, like I was a baby, so I don't really remember much like at young ages. But speaking about jiu-jitsu, I do know that I started training around 8 years old, you know. But it was very natural. If you ask me, hey, Andy, how was your first session? I don't really remember. It was very natural because in Japan, I don't know if you've been there or you talked with Japanese people or people who live in Japan before. The work culture there is crazy. They work from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. That's like
Yep.
the regular schedule, regular, you know. So to train jujitsu, it had to be after their their work, their job. So most of the classes there it starts around 9 p.m. for jujitsu. I don't know nowadays, but back in the day, the training was from like 9 to 11, 9 to 10:30, sometimes 8 to 10, sometimes. But that's how late training used to be in Japan, you know. And my dad used to work, a lot, and he couldn't really spend time with me or my brother. I have a brother as well. He's only a year younger, but he couldn't really spend time with us. And he would get home around 8 o'clock, 8:30. He would see us, and then he would have to go and leave to training. So I believe at one point he just decided to take us to training with him so he could spend
Mm-hmm.
more time with us. And I remember like for a good time, like me and my brother was just outside the mat, just being those annoying kids that make noise and everything while the class is running, you know. But I think that was my first time being introduced to jiu-jitsu. Like I was outside the mat watching my dad training. That was how I got into jiu-jitsu, And suddenly, like I was watching the class, and then they would be like showing an armbar, and then I would be trying on my own, my brother, on the outside. So it
Mhm.
was very natural, So I don't really remember when was my first actual class. I just remember being around the mat because of my dad. And back in the day, I believe he was a blue belt, I think. 2008, 2009, he was a blue belt. And I also remember I I hadn't trained jiu-jitsu yet, but I remember going to competition because my dad was competing, as a hobbyist, my dad was competing small local tournaments in Japan. And as a family, we all went together there and I was supporting my dad. For me, it was all fun. I didn't really understand win or lose in competition. I was just watching my dad compete. But that's how kind of I got started into jiu-jitsu.
Uh, yeah, actually, I've been in Japan. It was around this time, 2009. I competed at the Hickson Gracie International Cup. It's in
Uh-huh.
Hamamatsu.
Romance, yes. Yes.
Hamamatsu, they have a big Brazilian community there,
Yes.
right?
In,
They
in
have,
in whole Japan, to be honest,
yeah,
so many Brazilians. I think obviously outside Brazil, I think is the second place with most Brazilians,
I believe, yeah. And I was able to eat Brazilian food there too. There's some place that I found. I was like, oh, this is amazing. They have a Brazilian grocery store, so that was
Yeah.
really cool.
Even
And,
Brazilian schools. Like
yeah,
when I was
wow.
younger, like I can't really remember my age, but maybe like 5 to 8 or something like that. I was studying in a Brazilian school. It's like private school, kind of expensive compared to like a public school, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Not huge expense, not crazy expensive, but compared to a public school that's free, that's a
Mm-hmm.
lot more expensive. But they do have Brazilian schools in Japan. It's
Right
wild.
on. So when did competition show up in your life? How old were you? Do you remember your first tournament?
Yes, I had like three. I think I started training around 8 years old, and within like 2 or 3 months of training, I competed in my first tournament. And when I say 2 or 3 months of training, maybe nowadays people think, oh, he was probably taking like 5 classes a week, one time a
Mm-hmm.
day. No, it was like once or twice a week. It
Mm-hmm.
was. I remember we had the kids class. It was every Saturday, 10 to 12. Every Saturday, 10 to 12 kids class. That was my main class. Only one time a week. you know. And then
Wow.
Tuesday and Thursdays, that's when my dad used to train, or Monday and Wednesday, something like that. I will go at night and watch him training, and then would try and drill with my brother. But my official class was like Saturday, and my first competition was within 2 or 3 months of training. I had only one match. I managed to lose the match. I can't really remember the outcome, but I think I lost by points or something like that. And I remember I got really sad. But at the same time, something fired inside me. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, man, I need to train to improve. Like, I thought I was doing all right, like because in the kids class, I was doing all right. I thought I was doing all right. That's why I wanted to compete. But then I come here and I lost. Like, I only had one match and I lost. Like, what is this? So it made me want to train more. So I started training more and maybe with not even quantity, but when I was on the mat, I was maybe more focused. My intentions were better and at a young age. Then my second competition was maybe a month or 2 months later, and I remember I had two matches. I was able to submit my first one, and then the final was against the kid that I had lost my first competition, and I was able to I remember take him down, pass, and finish.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the reward feeling hit me. Like for the first time, I was like, wow, if you work towards something, if you really put the work with good intentions and
Beautiful.
yeah, the reward will come. That was the
Yeah.
first feeling with the reward and hard work that I had at a young age, like 8 years old, maybe 9 years old. And that's how
Man,
kind of competition hit me.
that's an incredible experience for a child. You know what I mean? To have this realization, like, oh wow, if I do this here and I put more work. I want to take a moment to mention something that you said. I had a conversation actually someone else one day and my son about training. We're talking, we live in the United States. We have people who listen podcasts from different places in the world, including Brazil. And I was telling him my journey was very different when I was training when I was in Brazil in the 90s. But I was mentioning to him like sometimes people in the United States take for granted a little bit the
Yes.
fact that they like, oh, I can just kind of like, there's a school close by. I just hop in my car real quick. I go train. Today, no. Like many places, even in US too, like depending where you live. But like, I'm talking like, I was mentioning to my son in Brazil, people take buses, stay hours in a bus, go to work. They leave work, they take another bus, go to a jiu-jitsu school to train, like you said, like the Japanese people, 8 p.m., 9 p.m. Talk about commitment. You got to really freaking love with the sport or love what you're doing to be able to at the end of a long ass day and you still want to go there and probably get beat up because it's just learning and then like man you come back for more. So I just want to mention if you're listening right now, don't take for granted just the opportunity to be training. And if you do train in a nice facility, even more. I get to travel a lot, Brazil, meeting social projects, a lot of very extremely humble places in the
Mhm.
training, and always putting me back in place. And I'm walking to my school and say, thank you for the opportunity to have an academy. There's a academy that actually have AC. You know what I mean? Like I've never trained with an AC in Brazil. It's like, what are you talking about AC?
They
You know?
have rentals, they have showers, they have clean
Yeah.
mats,
Yeah,
they have
it's
everything.
it's it's incredible. So now, when I know that one moment you moved to the United States, how was this transition for you? And I want to say how was this transition, but I want to get into deeper like mental and emotional aspect because moving out of state is already a change that a lot of people like afraid to do it. You've been living, in the area for so long. Moving out of the country, again, even more challenging. That's another language. And you being young, how was this transition for you?
Man, it was to be honest, nowadays looking back, I see that it was like a big deal. Like at 15, 16 years old, leaving my house, coming to the United States with no parents, no family, without speaking the language, without knowing anyone. I didn't know anyone. All I knew, I don't have anything to hide, but when I first came to the United States, the first person that gave me the opportunity was Kyle Terra, up in San Jose, Northern California. uh, and how everything happened. Going back a little bit, it was like 2015, maybe 2016, beginning of 2016. It was my first year of juvenile blue belt, and I was living in Japan. And in Japan, I didn't really have any example of people who were like doing jujitsu and being successful. When I say successful, it's not just financially, but like it's a mix of multiple factors, right? Many things. But I didn't have anyone. The only guy that I had, and I used to look up a lot to him, was Roberto Satoshi. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if you remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, Roberto Satoshi. He was the only guy that kind
The only
of
reference, huh?
only reference I had. I remember I used to buy the gis that he was sponsored by. Everything. But with that in mind, I was like, man, I need to move out of this place. I need to go to the United States. If I really want to leave off jiu-jitsu, I feel like that's where I'm gonna have the most chance of. If I want to succeed, if I want to achieve the goals I have, I think I need to be there. And especially because also training conditions in Japan, I didn't really have good training conditions. When I was around 15, I was already training every day, like Monday to Friday, one session a day only. You know, and it was a struggle. Where I live, they only had classes like Tuesdays and Thursdays at night. And in order for me to train Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I had to go to a different city. So I would take a train from like 6:30 that would leave my city around 6:30. Take that train, arrive there around 8 o'clock. It was an hour and a half distance by train. You know, walk like 15, 20 minutes, get to the academy, train from like 9 to 10:30, sometimes 10:45, 10:50, rush back to the train station, get there around 11 something, an hour and a half back home. I'll get home around 1 a.m., you know.
Wow.
And next day I would have to wake up at 7 when I was still in school. You know, when I was still in school, I would have to wake up at 7. Then at 8 I was already in school. At one point, when I was like 15, 14, I dropped out of school to start working in the factory so I could make more money and afford train tickets to train and everything, competitions, fees, and everything. But that was one of my main reasons that I decided I need to be in the United States because I wanted better training conditions, So I was, yeah, 2016. It's just, I'm trying to remember everything. But 2016, my first international competition was Europeans as a juvenile blue belt. I went there and I won double gold, and that was the first moment that I had the thought, man, I think I really can live off this. Like I have the potential. I just need to keep working. I'm still very young, but in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm winning everything here in Japan, in Asia, but I'm not really sure outside the country, worldwide, right? So when I went to Europeans and I managed to win double gold as a lightweight, I was like, man, I think this is for me. I just gotta keep putting more work. And then I went back to Japan, trained a little bit more, went to Pan American, win pants as a juvenile blue belt. Then I went to World Pro. I won World Pro as well. And that's when I met Kyle Terra, and he was like, "Hey, congrats! I watched you winning the final. I know you messaged me a while ago." And I'm like, "Yeah, I messaged you a while ago asking for like opportunity." I remember I messaged him saying, "Hey, I'm a huge fan. I live in Japan. I'm like 15, 16 years old, and my dream is to live off jiu-jitsu, and I would love to be in the United States and learning under you. And all I need is an opportunity. All I need is an opportunity. I will do everything you need. Like I will do everything. It has to be done to be there. If I need to sleep in the academy, if I need to clean the academy, clean the showers, bathroom, I don't care. I'll do everything. And and then I remember he read my message. He replied here and there, but he didn't really give me a lot of like hope, I would say, because I was very young. He was like, "Hey, I like your attitude, but you're very young. I need to talk to your parents and everything." Time passed by a little bit. I went to World Pro. I competed, and then I won. And in the warm up area, I ended up meeting him. But I was so shy that I couldn't talk to him. But then he came to me and be like, "Hey, I remember you messaged me, right, and everything." He asked me if I was going to Worlds. I was like, "Yeah, I'm going like the week off. I compete on a Saturday. I'm probably arriving around Wednesday." And he was like, "Why don't you come earlier? Why don't you come do a camp, a month, and get ready for Worlds?" And I was like, "I don't have where to stay. Financially I cannot afford it." He was like, "Just stay at the academy. Come. Just talk to your parents and come." So I went back to Japan. I talked to my parents, and literally the next week I went to San Jose. I flew to the United States. Everything happened so fast, and I didn't really have time to think about all the struggles I could possibly face because I was so not blinded, but like I was so happy following my passion, you know. And and when I first got here in the United States, I remember like everything I couldn't understand anything. Like they were speaking English and I couldn't understand anything. He picked me up at the airport, and he had a manager with him. They were speaking between them. I'm back on the back seat and I just can't understand anything. And that's my first struggle. I'm like, man, I gotta learn English. I gotta learn English. Uh, that was one of the most difficult things, learning English in the beginning. Being away from the family. In the beginning, the first week, second week, third week, it didn't hit me. But like after a few months, leaving the academy by yourself,
I imagine.
like at 16 years old, I remember I had a few nights where in the shower, like I was just like, man, this is tough. Like I wanted almost like to cry, and I was 16. But at the same time, I was so happy to be finally living a dream, being able to chase my goals and being where I wanted to be, So it was like a balance. One side of myself here it was like heavy, and I missed my family. I missed the comfort I had, and the other side was like, but I'm so happy to be here and chasing my goals. It was a mixed feeling in the beginning.
Man,
To this day, I'm not gonna lie. To this day,
oh,
you know,
because when you look back, it's kind of recent in a way when you think about it. It's like 2016, 17. It's not that long ago. It's not
time
like me,
flies.
like 30 years ago, I came, you know what I mean? That's different, so it's incredible. And man, I want to praise you for something that like you transformed your life, right? You're able to very young um, realize what you want to do, and there's a formula that I like to share with people that is awareness plus action equals transformation. What
Mhm.
happens sometimes people want a transformation in their lives. They are aware of what they want, but they don't pull the trigger. They don't take the action. There will be no transformation without this kind of pain, especially the one that you did. And the same thing with me and many others who left their home, especially in a different country. And you don't want to just take random actions without being aware, because that's not going to transform your life either. But just being how many when you stop to reflect, no, how many goals and dreams that people let pass by, they
Mhm.
are aware with it. Sometimes you don't know what you want, and that's totally fine. But it's when you do know, but you have that internal battle that I don't know if because you can start thinking like, man, I'm gonna go to the U.S. I don't know anybody. I don't speak the language.
We
I think it's
overthink.
better to stay here. Yeah, and people do. So you being young, and I think that's the good part of being young, that we're naive. We don't know better. It's just kind of like, I want to do this. I just know that I want to do this. I don't know what I'm going to face. I don't know what kind of challenge I'm going to do, but I just know that I want to do this. And I always mention to people like the idea of climbing a mountain, like each goal being a mountain. And you're gonna have small mountains, big ones. You're gonna have hikes that is just little challenges. There's all kinds of different ones, And this one for you, I was like, okay, we're talking about a big one here. Okay, so big climbs are not easy whatsoever. You know what I mean? So being able to do that, have the awareness, take massive action, still taking action because now you're a professional jiu-jitsu competitor, and because you had to take that risk, you had to really like face the fears. And that's the same thing that we talk here on the podcast to entrepreneurs that want to start a business. They're in a job that they don't like, they have a passion, and they don't know when to pull the trigger. Should I do it? Should I leave my work? And sometimes not leave the work, do both. Do have a job and have your part-time job.
Yeah.
And there's a famous quote from Jim Rohn that said, work full-time on your living, part time on your dream. And one day, with a lot of work and sacrifice and discipline, this part time can become
A
your
full
full
time.
time, which that's basically what happened to you. You
Yeah.
had eventually a job that has to pay, did what you had to do. And until a point that are like, I don't need this anymore. Now this can be my full time job. So everyone listening right now, and you questioning your goals and dreams, and got a question why you're doing, and that is that you are aware, you know what you want. If you don't pull the trigger, if you don't take massive action like you did, you reach out, you got in
Hmm.
contact with Kyle, made the effort to just go travel internationally. If you don't do that, there will be no transformation. And you've been able to see this throughout your journey now.
And Gustavo, you said something that it made me. I remember here. One of the main reasons as well. I had this thought in my mind that man, I need to be in the United States. I need to leave this country. One, I told you I didn't have any like reference, right? Successful people in jiu-jitsu living in Japan. And two, everyone around me, man, they were like, I was 15, 16 year old already, but I was always very mature for my age. Maybe because of jiu-jitsu and maybe, because I got to like go to competition with adults and just me as a kid, but with
The
multiple adults.
Japanese culture too.
Maybe the Japanese culture as well, but I was always very mature for my age, from early ages. But looking around myself, I'm like, my parents, they work in a job they don't like. That was the reality. You know, when I was a young age, my parents, they used to work in a factory, 8 to 8. They had no time for themselves, and they didn't really save any money. It was just enough to live check by check. You know, their friends and everyone I knew around, they didn't have any savings or anything, and they were unhappy. They were working a job that they don't like, but they cannot afford to miss a day of job. Otherwise, they get
Yep.
fired. You know, they have multiple responsibilities, and my friends around my age, 15, 16, they were either dropping out of school or they were still studying, but then eventually they will work in the factory from 8 to 8 because that's kind of the culture, you know.
Yep.
The friends that dropped out of school at early age, they were working in minimum salary jobs, and they'll soon like at 16 start dating, at 17 being a dad, and like
Mm-hmm.
not good marriage, not good
Yep.
education, you know. And then I was like, man, I don't want this for myself, and thank God my dad was always telling me, my dad was always hey Andy, like I live this life, but I don't want this life for you, you know. And I know if you stay here, you're gonna have to, it's like you're swimming against the ocean, against
Yep.
the waves. Like it's not gonna help you if you stay here. Like even though I'm a dad and I would like to live with you, to have you by my side and be by your side on the good and down moments, I think you need to go. And that's one of the things that also gave me the safe zone to actually leave to United
Mm-hmm.
States. My parents were supporting me. It was tough for them. In the beginning, I'm like, Dad, don't worry about it. I'll be fine. But now I'm 25, and I teach
Yeah.
kids classes at Atos HQ. And I see some of the kids at 14, 15, and they're still a kid. They
Yeah.
might think they're juveniles and becoming
Oh yeah.
adults, but man, they're still a kid. They don't know anything. So putting in my parents' shoes, I'm like, wow, my parents
Oh
also,
yeah.
like, they invested a lot of like faith and effort.
Courageous in a way too. Courageous for, taking the challenge they did, and to really like motivated to that, even though they know that it's suffering for them, it's tough for them not have you close by. But as my mom always say, we raise our children for like
Right.
for the world. You know what I mean? To just kind of to be out there. I want to ask you. You had a very busy and successful color belt journey.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I feel that there are moments throughout our journey overall in jiu-jitsu when I look back, I've been doing this for 35 years, but I want to ask you what moment in the color belt journey that you feel, I feel that there are moments in our journey that will feel a boost of confidence. Sometimes because you beat someone tough, sometimes even if it's not necessarily you won the tournament, but there's a major competitor that you're like, dude, I'm here with them. I'm competitive, when you win, cool. But do you remember a moment that you feel a little click, something changing, a
Mm-hmm.
specific event that this happened?
Yes. So the first one I mentioned. It was my first international tournament as a juvenile blue belt.
Yeah.
Still, for me, it was a click. It's like, okay, I knew I was good in my country, in my Asia, but I was able to also win Europe and double gold, being a lightweight. So that was a click. But still, in my
Yeah.
mind, it's just a European. It's not really
The negative
world.
voice is always there, saying
It's
some, giving
always
it two
there.
cents. Yeah.
Yeah, a seed was planted, for sure. It
Yeah.
was planted. It gave me hope, but I still had that doubt. I was able to eventually win pens, World Pro, and then at Worlds, I was able to win double gold, being a lightweight, winning double gold. I remember in the final of the open class, I even fought Roberto Jimenez,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, that was like a good final. I was able to win, and that was my first real click. I was okay. I'm here. I'm still young. I know I'm very young. It was juvenile first year. As a juvenile, I was 16 years old. But that was my first click. My second click I had, Gustavo, was when I won. Pan's double gold at brown belt in 2020. It was during the pandemic, you know. And during the pandemic, it was a very difficult moment because everything was unsure. You know, I was still a brand new brown belt in 2020 when the pandemic started, and you know, I was still struggling. I would say, you know, like in every in many senses, right? Many aspects, not just financially, but you know. So it was unsure, you know, but I kept like very positive, and I kept, you know, just to be honest, just chasing my passion. Like this is what I love, you know. Like they ask you, right? Like if money wasn't a problem, what would you be doing? I would be doing jiu-jitsu. I love this. I love to compete.
Yep.
I love to teach. I love to train. I love to be around this jiu-jitsu environment, you know. So I kept positive, and then Pants came 2020, brown belt. I did lightweight in the open class. I had like, I believe I had 8 matches total. I submitted 7. And the finals, I won by like 12-2 against like a super ultra heavy. I guess Mason Flower at the time. And that was my second click. I was like, okay, like with this performance, I'm ready for the black belt, I believe. You know, that was my second click. Then I had a third click. That was my black belt debut. It was like a lightweight Grand Prix. In the bracket, we had like Mateus Gabriel. He was already a world champion. We had Gianni Grippo, Marcio André, and Jonathan Alves. You know, so many champions. Jamil, like so many world champions in the black belt, and I was there. You know, usually people black belt debut, they tend to plan the career. They go to open. They tend to have a easier match. I went right into a Grand Prix with multiple world champions, and I was able to win after like 3 tough matches. And that was my third real click, and I was like, okay, like I'm here. You know, it boosts my confidence. It not so much boosting the confidence because I was already coming in very confident, even though I was a brand new black belt and I had no experience. But it was
The word is a validation of your work.
validation. It was a confirmation of something.
Exactly. Not for, you know, I like to mention this because I experienced this too. It's like you have your stamp of official just for you. No one knows about it, but
Yes,
like inside, you know that I belong and I have officially arrived. At least in your mind, that's what matters the most.
for
If people
sure.
think that, you know, like, well, he hasn't, like, that's their problem, but what matters is in your mind, like, I belong here, and the result shows. I remember watching this Grand Prix actually, and you did have a very good performance, and definitely this is something that it does take to another level, because what happens, there's a subtle, if you're listening at home and maybe you feel that you're struggling a little bit, or when you talk about confidence or kind of believing you can do or not, and there's a difference between the self-confidence and confidence. The self-confidence is like you may have, like, you know, at some point you had the self-confidence or the ability to do a specific task, or like, I
Mhm.
know how to play my systems, I know my guard, I know properly how to technically do an armbar, I know how to technically do this. So you feel confident that you're like, I know how to do it. It's not like, oh, I'm not sure if I know how to do this right. Now confidence is, how well can you really put all that when it matters?
Wait a
How
minute. Under the
confident,
pressure.
yeah, how confident are you that you can utilize this against the best dudes in the world, knowing that sometimes it's going to work or not? That is the difficulty. You know, developing at the academy, just the technique, the self confidence that you can accomplish something technically or do, cool. Now that, you know, it's and you're competing in the light, well, in different ones, but I mean, you're going against the best guys out there now. And now I want to ask you about some like good and also good moments you can share. It could be collar belts or black,
Mhm.
doesn't matter. But I look more for the emotional trigger. Like, one is, what do you feel was one of the kind of like not so good performances that you had, that you left the mat and you said, like, dude, that was not me today? Sometimes you don't even know why you were off, and but you just felt like, if you're listening at home, I feel like, I don't know. I feel that everyone that has competed a lot before, everyone has a sad story to tell. Everyone's gonna have a day that I'm like, man, it just, things didn't work, you know. So, what experience was that if one comes to your mind, and what was the lesson? What did you learn from it?
Man, I had a few, I would say. You know, to be very honest, all of my world's finals, it was a huge like learning experience to me. You know,
Mm-hmm.
not just the result, like the
Yeah, yeah,
finals
yeah.
or the event itself, but the preparation prior to the event. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so they're all. I had like different preparation and like camp camp, I would say, for the all the times I competed worlds, you know.
Okay.
So if we look back, my first world title, sorry, my first world title. It's coming. You see, my mind is
Yeah.
visualizing. But the first time I was supposed to compete World Championship, Gustavo, it was 2021 end of the year. You know, because I got my black belt end of 2020. My first competition as a black belt was April 2021 that we mentioned. And then we had pens along the way. I believe it was because of the pandemic, the schedule, the calendar was different. We had pens in 2021 September, something like that. And then we had Worlds. You know, at Worlds, I didn't compete. It was supposed to be my first time competing, you know, Worlds as a black belt, and I didn't compete. And for man, multiple reasons, you know, I was in a very down moment of my life, I would say, you know, and for multiple reasons. Honestly, to this day, it's kind of I can't really say it was one thing that caused this down moment. It was
Mm-hmm.
multiple things, and one of them, Gustav, being very honest, it was also mental. It was you know, I was here by myself. You know, like I didn't have any family. You know, and I know it's been a while since I left home, but it was the first time actually that it was the first time ever that I actually felt lonely, I would say, here in
Gotcha.
the United States. You know, because when I got here, of course I felt lonely here and that, but I had always people around the academy. I had like, you know, close people. I was living with someone. But at that time that in my down moment that I had, I was actually by myself. You know, I was not just feeling that way, but I was actually by myself in a way. And I think that caused these ups and downs I had. And you know, we go into 2022. I had my first worlds as a middleweight. You know, and I'm a guy that I was. If you look back on the record, I was doing lightweight. You know, the reason I did middleweight, I was already not in a good stage yet. You know, I didn't recover yet from my ups and downs. You know, I wasn't at my best. But doing the world's final, you know, first year, second year, and third year, and I don't know. It's a mix of feelings. It's hard to say. You know, I'm I'm going back and forth here in my mind, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't even know what to say. To be honest,
Were you able to feel comfortable on a mat though?
to feel comfortable on the mat.
Yeah, yeah. Like with during, especially the finals, did you feel pretty
Yeah,
comfortable?
no, I felt comfortable, Gustavo, but you know, it's because these things I have
You
never.
let's say
No, you know, I have never really said these things before,
uh-huh.
but like people around me, they know. And the only worlds I competed wanting to be there, I'm being very open here right now. The only world championship I competed wanting to be there, it was last year. It was the year that I fought lightweight last year, and I had the final against Mika. That was the only worlds I did where I was preparing for it actually, where I was training, where I was happy to be competing, you know. 2023, I did medium heavy. People think I'm this heavy. I'm not that heavy. You know, I did
Hmm.
medium heavy for other reasons. I wasn't like out of shape, and for other reasons, I didn't really want to be there. To be very honest, being very open, you know.
Hmm.
2022, same thing, you know, and that was that's what I'm saying. Like it's hard to say one moment because I had few moments where I
Gotcha.
was trying to still bounce back from my, you know, down moment, I would say. But passing through this whole experience, you know, it made me appreciate things a little more and also know myself more. You know, because people think they know themselves. Maybe you're not, you don't really know yourself that well that you think you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only in those moments of difficulty that you actually stop to analyze everything and
Absolutely.
and and to really find and know your values, I would say, you know, what makes you happy, what doesn't make you happy, and who you are, you know, because I know I compete and I'm an athlete and this is, I love doing this, but that's not just who I am, you know. There's
Yeah.
more behind it. You know, life is bigger than that, right? And so, you know, it was my first few years as a black belt that, you know, it should matter so much and should be the best years of my life. In my mind, it's actually big. It actually turned out it wasn't as good I was hoping or I was expecting to be, you know, and in those moments you start comparing yourself as well. You compare yourself with people that they just got to the black belt and they're having amazing careers and amazing years so far, amazing first few years, you know, and things are happening. But nowadays, I don't. Nowadays, I'm actually glad that I passed through all these moments I passed because I feel a lot more mature. I feel a lot more experienced, tougher. I know myself better, you know, and I really, I really feel like if I take care of my body, I still have at least 10 more years competing. So in the long term, this was just preparing myself for what's about to happen. You know, that's my mindset. You know, that's how I see my journey so far.
Absolutely. So what are you mentioning about some of the stuff that you're going through? When it was 2014, I created a list of the top 10 mental mistakes jiu-jitsu competitors make and how to avoid them. I made it based on mistakes that I personally made. And then over the years, in interviewing so many people, I did the top 30 mistakes with included stuff that I did as well, plus experience from other people. And one of them is bringing outside issues to the mat in certain way. When I say the mat, could be the training mat, it could be the competition mat, that you're just having a hard time to disconnect with what is going on outside. And that's a
Mhm.
huge battle that many men, most of the high level guys, at some people in general, to be honest, it's not even about high level, like moments in your journey that something is going on outside and end up reflecting on the mat. So, and again, in being young and what you said about knowing yourself, because that's one of the things that I believe in jujitsu, especially competition. You get to learn a lot about yourself when you're under pressure. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So you get to learn. So that's one of the big incentives that I give for people to attempt to try competition is like to just try it out. If something that you want to do with it, but it's just for the personal development aspect. And so it's amazing that you had this experience and being able to grow from it. Now, what is a performance that stands out, a good one that you say, like, man, this day it felt amazing. Everything was clicking from the moment that you woke up, you felt the vibe. What
Mhm.
is a tournament that comes to your mind?
Man, I think those last. I mean, I had more great performance. You know, to be
That's what I
honest,
mentioned. Super consistent, very
yeah.
consistent.
To be honest, it's not because the outcome wasn't positive that I didn't have a good performance. For
Of
example,
course.
Worlds last year, I believe I had a really good performance. You know, I ended up losing the final against Mika. It was a little controversial, those the points at the end,
Yeah.
but a loss is a loss, and I'm okay with that. I'm not, you know. But I had a great performance during the match, during the whole event. You know, when I did medium heavy as well, Worlds medium heavy, I had a great performance. You know, it wasn't at my best. I wasn't at my best, but I did my best with what I had at the moment, and I had a great performance. You know, so it's hard. People usually tend to associate performance with results and outcome. And sometimes,
Exactly.
you know, it's not really like that. Sometimes you can win, but you don't perform well.
Absolutely.
You win and you go back home feeling like you didn't do well, and that has happened to me a few times. But I've also had moments where I lost, and I'm like, man, I think I did everything I could. I performed well. It just wasn't enough, unfortunately, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But if we need to match the performance with the outcome, with the positive outcome, it would for sure be Pan's double gold when I won double gold at brown belt. Man, that day was, I don't know, felt something different inside me.
Mm-hmm.
It was everything was everything was just, even my mistakes were working.
Mm-hmm.
you know, and then my black belt debut at the lightweight Grand Prix as well. It was special.
And this one as a brown belt, did you feel like a momentum going throughout the tournament? Because I mentioned how it's sometimes there's one thing like you believe you can win, and then you have some events that you have a conviction, something so much stronger that you don't know how to explain, but it's like it's happening. It's happening
Yes,
today. You know what I mean? So you feel that was kind of like that?
yes, yes. I remember I was very confident. I was very confident, but in my mind, I was just like, man, I just need to be able to be present in the
Mm-hmm.
moment so I
Mm-hmm.
can actually do what I know I'm capable of doing. That was
Yes.
everything I was thinking. And that was everything I was thinking like the days prior to the event. And the day of the event, was just so present. Like there were so many things that were happening that was out of my control during that day, but it didn't bother me. I didn't get stressed. I didn't get worried about it. No, I was very present. I remember I won my division and I was so happy too. I was full of joy because I had a really great performance, meeting everyone. But then they asked me like if I was happy. I'm like, yeah, I'm happy, but I want more. I want to win double gold. That's the first thing I say. And then we go back home to the Airbnb. I'm eating. Open class it's scheduled to start at 6 p.m. It starts like at 5, and I'm like 30 minutes away. I was eating a huge bowl of pasta. I'm driving back. But I was enjoying the moment, and I was super happy to be there. I get there for my first match in the open class, and no warm up. I literally just run straight to the mat, fight well, submit the opponent, and just go match per match. I was very present in the moment. That day was one of the days that, man, even if I did something wrong, he would turn out positive. That was one of the days.
Now, you mentioned a little bit about being present and being mindful and confident. So, how do you practice mental training? Have you talked with a sports psychologist or a mental coach? Did you have any kind of guidance? I assume André Galvão, with so much experience, that he can give you so much tips and mental and emotionally how to deal those crucial moments that he experienced so many times. So tell me a little bit more about your view on mental and what you do.
I think everyone should work on their mental part. Just like if you want to lose weight or you want to get healthier, whatever is your goal, you're going to hire a good nutritionist. If you want to get fitter, stronger, whatever is your goal, you're going to hire someone that understands about it, a strength and conditioning coach. Mental is the same thing. And I only learned it through my experiences that I told you where I had down moments in my life. That's when I was first introduced uh, to the mental game, I would say. I didn't know about it. It was like I didn't know.
Yep.
But when I got to that moment, it got to the group where, okay, now I know I don't know about this, but I want to learn more about it. You know. And Professor Andrea was actually the person who introduced me uh to the psychology therapy session, because I didn't know about it. And it was something that it was game changing. I remember to this day the first session I did, it wasn't a sports psychologist. It was just a regular therapy session. But the first session I did, it was, I don't know, it was game changing. Like I was like, wow.
I
It's like
believe.
it was an hour session, and it felt like a 5 minute session. Time flew. How I'm like, man, I have so much more to learn and speak, but I gotta wait for the next session, I guess. You know. But one thing that it clicked to me, Gustavo, is I used to think that we have a personal life and a professional life. And I was taking care a lot of my professional life, but my personal life wasn't, well balanced. And to be honest, we do have, but we don't really have. It's a one life, right? Our personal life will somehow affect your professional life. You can be tough, you can be able to separate things here and there, but to some degree, if your personal life is not going well, your professional life will not go well. It's extremely difficult to manage both. It's doable, yes. It takes skill, it takes experience, I would say. But if you're, I guarantee that anyone that has a personal life that is running really well will perform better at their professional life. Anyone, and that's one thing that I learned through the mental work. I've done regular therapy session. I've done sports therapy session as well. Nowadays, I only do regular psychology therapy session. Sometimes we talk about sports competition. Sometimes we talk about life. But I do it regularly. And every session, sometimes I go into the session, Gustavo, and I'm like, I don't really feel like I have something to talk about it today. And then boom, I do the session and I leave with my mind brainstorming. I'm like, wow, like I never thought about this. Like, why is this? And you're brainstorming, and I can just feel that those conversations, those sessions are building my mind, my values a little bit better, my questions, because it's important to question things. People sometimes just leave on autopilot, they don't question anything.
Yep.
Why you're doing something, why you reacted that way, why you're chasing that goal. People don't
Mm-hmm.
question, they just live on autopilot. So I feel like over the sessions and the years, I'm also being able to have better questions, you know. And it has, I think ever since I started the mental work, that's when consistently I'm improving. Because in the beginning of my black belt, I had ups and downs, which is okay. It was a moment I needed. But ever since I started working on my mental and my personal life, I'm consistently improving. It's okay. I have great performance, like I told you. Great performance. Maybe the outcome wasn't as positive as I expected. I still performed well, but looking from the outside on a bigger picture, I can see I'm consistently improving. And I'm okay with it. Everyone has different journey. I'm only 25, and if I do a good job taking care of my body, I know I have at least 10 more years at the highest level. If I want to. So I'm
Dude.
okay. Like that's why I told you, and I actually believe that all this maybe 3, 4 years at the black belt that I had in the beginning, it was preparing myself for something bigger, and I can
Oh,
feel it. And
you
that's one
bet.
message I can maybe give to the people who's watching is resilience, right? Sometimes you also need some resilience and faith in what you're doing and what you're chasing, because sometimes things won't really go well, in the
Yeah.
beginning, like you planned, but it doesn't mean it's a failure. It doesn't mean it's a failure. Uh, yeah, that's
Yeah,
kind of
dude,
my thought.
it's amazing, especially for people who are listening, more in the masters crowd. I wish when I was 25, the information right now is very different than were a long time ago.
For sure.
Growing up in the 90s, there's no talk whatsoever. Therapy, you're crazy. Why are you going to therapy? Why are you crazy? So
That
there's
that
no
was
such.
that was my thought
Yeah.
before I started doing therapy.
Well, why do I have to go? I'm not crazy. Why do I have to? So this misconception that people have. So for me, it was my personal development journey. It's cool that you started this journey younger. I got it in my 30s to being introduced to like therapies and books and retreats and so many things that I was like, oh my God. I'll dabble, read some stuff here and there, but actually, okay, let's put work on yourself. Let's say, yes, let's reevaluate things. Let's ask some tough questions. So the sooner you can do that, the better, and when we don't is because we're in denial. I don't need this. Nah. And we need to hit sometimes kind of rock bottom to be like, I do need professional help. I need to talk with someone, you know, and mine, it came like that too. At a moment that you did low and was like, dude, I need to talk with someone. And everything that you're saying about feeling good in your personal life that will reflect in everything else. And guys, it's for everyone, all the business owners, everything that you're just putting crazy amount of hours. I understand there's grind time and all that stuff, but it's, you know, people have different perceptions about the meaning of the word balance, you know, but you still at the end of the day want to try to work in this in the best way that doesn't affect so much, you know, especially the personal. And it's awesome that I had opportunity to do that so young. Let me ask you this: now at this point in his career, I want to get a little bit with the competition. As far as I like to ask, do you work on, like, do you study jiu-jitsu? Do you study possible opponents? And when you do, what exactly you're looking for? Because this can be a topic that uh I ask, and then we'll have like high level guys like Lucas Lepre, for example. He said, like, personally, I don't watch, but my team tells me, like, hey, this is the kind of system he plays. Hey, it's this. It's
Okay.
like he's like, I don't like to put that image in my head, but I do have someone that is going to kind of like give me some. So it's not like you're going completely just kind of blind into the situation. So how do you feel about that?
I like to study. I like
Mm-hmm.
to study my opponents. During the color bouts, I remember like sometimes you will be in a bracket with 100 people. Obviously, you're not going
Yeah.
to study everyone, but you have your main maybe four, three
Yeah. Yeah.
guys, that you should be studying. And that was my mindset. Once you get to the black belt, it gets kind of easier to study because you have more footage and you know
Yeah.
it's kind of easier nowadays to study online. And when I'm studying my opponents, I tend to not focus too much on their strengths. That's important to know their strengths, you know. But I tend to focus more on what are their weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, depending on the level we are talking about, you're not gonna see a big weakness, but you're
Yeah.
gonna see a point where this there's an energy shift where they went from very offensive or very confident posture to a more uncomfortable and more weight on their heels. And those are the things I'm trying to look when I'm studying matches. Obviously, there's the technical aspect, the approach, the patterns. That every time he pulls guard, he pulls like this, or every time someone shoots a single leg on him, he reacts this way. There's those patterns, but I'm trying to see a little bit deeper, when I'm studying opponents. Like, what does he feel comfortable with, and when does he start to feel uncomfortable? Because that's where I
Mm-hmm.
want to take the pace. That's where I want to play. You know, but obviously, not with everyone, but I know that with the level I am today, and sometimes with the level you're gonna face in the competition, you know, I I don't need to be that deep on the study, but there's a few matches and few guys that we need to be in that level because it's a war. Like,
Yeah.
you can't go to a war without knowing your opponent, and also you need to know yourself. Often people only study their opponent, but they don't
Mm-hmm.
know about themselves. They don't know what are their strengths. They
Oh
don't know
yeah.
what are their weaknesses. You need to know where you feel comfortable, where you don't feel comfortable, so you can start trying to bring the match to where you feel comfortable. Because nobody's perfect. This even people, that maybe, man, their weakness hasn't been exposed. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean they don't have weakness. It doesn't mean,
Exactly. Yes.
especially on training room. We see this from training room. Maybe, there is this guy that in competition, man, he had A matches, A submission, no points scored, not even a single moment he was exposed. But you see him during the training camp, he was exposed multiple times. That, and often people they don't see that. They think, oh, if the weakness wasn't exposed, it means they don't have weakness. No, they do have a weakness. Everyone has. We work to improve that point. That's why we train. We work a lot to improve those weaknesses and turn into our strength, or at least where we feel comfortable. But everyone has it, and that's what I'm looking to find or notice when I'm studying opponents and matches.
I feel that I think has changed a lot the kind of vocabulary in jiu-jitsu in a way, but it was in the 90s was very strong. Still people talk about it, but like I'm a so guardeiro, I'm a guard player,
Mhm.
or I'm a guard passer. And they carry this negative self-label. I'm saying this because I lived that, because I did that. I wasn't a like the featherweight or the double pulls and all those type of things.
I'm a guard player.
Yeah, for so I did it for a long time too. But I feel that the proper word is, and for people who are listening right now, I know that people, maybe you're a blue belt, you compete as a master, or compete here and there, and you say I'm a top player, I'm a bottom player. The reality is the word is complete. You must feel comfortable playing top or bottom. If you're gonna keep training and you enjoy competing, at some point you're going to compete as a black belt, even in the master worlds. I don't care if it's master one to master six or whatever, but you're going to compete people against in your weight, in your age group that are good at putting their time. And whether you like it or you don't, at some point you're going to be on bottom or you're going to be on top, and just developing that. And that's something that I had to force myself in a way of like, okay, this tournament, I'm gonna double pull, I'm gonna come up, I'm gonna go for a takedown. I had to really face my fears, stupid
Mhm.
fears, of like not feeling so. Even though I was a pretty decent passer at the academy, at the tournament, I'll fall into my comfort zone of pull guard,
Mhm.
you know. And with time, I started, and of course, as I started to study, and even as a master, start to like address even more what fears do I have. I need to address those. So, did you go through a moment in your journey that you felt unbalanced, top and bottom, or you because feels like, I mean, you're super balanced. There's no question
Mhm.
about it. But I'm saying, like, did you go through a phase like that? But you always look pretty complete to me.
Yes, to be honest, I ever since I'm a color belt, blue belt, I, thank God I never had that self labeled of I'm a guard player or I'm
Mm-hmm.
a top player. I always had the mindset of I need to be complete. I
Mm-hmm.
need to be complete. I know it's like chasing perfection, but understanding I'll never chase. I'll actually get to perfection, and I'm being okay with that. No, but I'm chasing perfection, and since early ages, like I always had that in mind. Okay, I need to be able to feel comfortable standing. I need to be able to feel comfortable on bottom and top. And sometimes you don't really need to be. It doesn't need to be your specialty. It doesn't. Yeah, like being standing, for example, your top game. It doesn't really need to be your strength. It could be, but it needs to be at least where you feel comfortable. You cannot be uncomfortable. That was my mindset growing up, like blue belt, purple belt.
I
So
wish.
yeah, I always worked with you know uh, with those intentions in my mind. So I would say I'm always if, to this day I feel comfortable standing on bottom, top. I feel comfortable anywhere pretty much.
Yeah,
There's
I
obviously I think one thing that I can improve in my game, but that's because we spend a lot more time on bottom and playing jiu-jitsu is my standing game. I can definitely
yeah.
improve, and I'm working to improve my judo, my wrestling. But it's not where I feel uncomfortable for jiu-jitsu. I feel comfortable, but I
Mm-hmm.
know I can still,
Yeah.
this seed here can still give me a lot of fruits. There's a lot to
Absolutely.
learn from that seed.
And for people who um listening and thinking about this, you become so much more dangerous and not predictable. They're like, oh, this guy always pull guard. Oh, this guy, I have a great example of Orlando Monteiro, one of my black belts.
Uh-huh.
He he won he won the Europeans weight. He won the Open and lost the final of his weight. He had 11 matches, and all doing what he did before, pulling guard, foot lock,
Triangle.
triangle or advantage, but he would avoid going top.
What the-
Get the advantage, go top, do the thing. So getting results, and I told him like, what is your long-term goal. Like, well, I'll become a world-class black belt, like, and I said, like, well, so as soon as he got his purple belts, like, so you better change right now. I'm gonna tell you what I wish someone had told me. I didn't have the clarity for that, but you better start playing top right now. You go, those are small little terms. Do you think I care? You triangle a bunch of like people that got no business competing against you? Like, yeah, it looks cool on Instagram, but it's not doing you any good. Like from now on, you go into small tournaments, you either, just kind of battling for takedowns or waiting for someone to pull. You don't like to be in close guard, get inside someone's close guard. Oh, you got submitted by a nobody. Who cares? Like you have to feel comfortable. And to this day, and then he became very complete. And by brown belt, he was already like solid, complete, and it was like purple, like getting better, but brown, I felt that that's when it really clicked. And now I always tell him I'm happier to see his highlights of him passing than him submitting because, like, yeah, I've seen you doing this God knows how many times, but I know how hard you worked on your mindset to feel comfortable to play on top. And that's what you need to do because people, guys, there's flow. People will study you,
First,
so they start getting used with your patterns. When you go, how is your process of testing new things? Because sometimes this is something that happened with many people. You're doing some moves, some good positions and systems at the school, but you haven't used in a competition yet, either because the situation hasn't presented itself or sometimes because of lack of confidence. The situation came and you're like, I didn't pull the trigger, maybe next time. So, how do you go about that when you're working on a new system? Do you
yes.
test that out in smaller tournaments before?
I yes, I think nowadays, Gustavo, at least for myself, all my confidence it comes from the training. The positive results in training. I
Mm-hmm.
know. Uh, for example, you mentioned earlier, oh, maybe the opportunity presented itself, but I didn't feel confident,
Mm-hmm.
to go there and execute the move. Maybe it's lacking more positive results in training, right?
Uh-huh. Gotcha.
Because nowadays I can't really compete every weekend. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't as far as periodization, it doesn't make sense for me to compete every weekend or every other weekend here just to
Absolutely.
gain experience. And I feel like I'm at a point where I have enough experience. I competed pens a few weeks ago. If I just compete worlds, that's like 12, 13 weeks apart, I'm not gonna lose competition with them. I feel
Yeah.
good with it. How I gain new skills and how I feel confident with those new skills is totally in training. Totally in training. If it's something very new that I don't do yet, we start with just drilling. Right, I need to first learn the mechanics how to do it. Then I drill with some reaction with my partner, giving possible reactions. You know. Then after that, I go into situational training. I put myself in that position. We start from there. Hey, give me a 100% go. I'll go with it, and let me see what will happen. And you're gonna have positive results, negative results. Sometimes things will go well. Sometimes they're gonna counter, and you're gonna be in a bad position. Which is fine. It's just training. You're figuring out. You're creating patterns and systems in your jiu-jitsu. So when you go to the competition, you feel very confident with all the possible scenarios. And that's I try to not overthink it. In my mind, maybe because I've been doing this for so long
Yeah.
already, it sounds very simple. But I've always received messages, oh, how do you improve a new technique or how do you gain a new skill? And first drill with reaction, situational training, maybe
Mat time.
yeah, meta maybe 50% resistance, then increase to 100% resistance. Then the final stage is regular sparring. Let's say my goal is to work on X guard. Regular sparring, we're gonna start standing. They don't know you want to work on X guard. You're gonna pull guard, and you're gonna find a way to get to the X guard, and you're gonna
Mm-hmm.
find a way to execute that specific technique you're trying to work. That's the end of the phase. Now, once you hit there and you repeatedly have successful attempts, you're gonna start feeling confident. But you need those moments because if you don't have those moments,
Absolutely.
you know, you're not gonna be able to translate that to competition when the scenarios are a lot more chaotic. Like you feel maybe adrenaline, maybe you feel the pressure. Who knows? You know.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. I like sometimes to ask an athlete. The word, the expression, let's say in Portuguese is mente blindada, which is like an armored mind, someone that is wired differently mentally. For example, so I want you to mention to me maybe someone that comes to your mind. I'm gonna exclude André Galvão just
Mhm.
because it's like such a different shelf, different tier. And I've heard like from multiple people that he's extremely disciplined. Like,
Yes.
it's not by accident dude accomplished what he accomplished and everything, right? So, but from like training partners and stuff, who's someone that stands out that you mean like, dude, this dude mentally that could be competing, training, his mindset in general is different? Who comes to your mind?
Man, mindset. That I had the pleasure of meeting and training with.
Yeah, I mean, because sometimes you have some of the training partners you see discipline. It's just that overall like dedication and strong mind and confidence.
Mhm.
No one is perfect, but guys that you can see, and usually they end up. Usually, it comes along with good results. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yeah. Man, to be honest, I think Kainan Duarte.
Okay.
I think his mind and how he sees things and how confident he is in his skills, it's very admiring. Because sometimes discipline and dedication, I think that's kind of the baseline. But
Yeah.
a lot of times you see people that they, let's say, they train 10 hours a day, you know, but due to insecurity, they feel insecure. They're not really confident.
Gotcha.
That's why they feel the need of drilling the same brain bola 10,000 times, you know. And I feel like Kylan has a really good balance on that. He has a really good balance on discipline and education, but also with confidence that he knows when he has done enough and he's okay with it. I think he has really good mindset and approach when it comes to that. It's someone I mean, if you look at the results, I think the
Oh
results
yeah.
speak by itself, right? But because I've seen many athletes that I train 8 hours a day, I train 10 hours a day, and I'm thinking it's either not high intensity,
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
it's not sustainable, or I don't know, you're a freak and you're freak and you're having a lot of work, but you're not having results for other reasons that I don't know why.
Yeah.
But when I look at Kainan, he it's very admiring. Like his mindset. Professor, like you said, Professor Galvão is on a different shelter. I think he has both. He's the type of guy that will work 8 10 hours, but he has the mindset that I just mentioned. You
Mm-hmm.
know. But
Beautiful.
Rotolo brothers, same thing.
They seem very strong mentally too.
Mentally, they're very sharp.
Comfortable.
Man, Ty is here getting ready for his Dante's match. He's fighting against Dante Leon. He's getting ready, and they live in Costa Rica. And sometimes when they're here, it's more in Huntington Beach, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But here and there, they come to San Diego to train with us. And I see him train toe to toe with everyone. Ty, like he doesn't care if he's lighter, if he's cutting weight.
Hmm.
He's training with Kaina. He's training with Pena that he's in the town. And it's very rare for a lightweight to do that.
Oh
He's like
yeah.
185, 170 sometimes, and that's also different. Something I
Nice.
admire.
Getting close to the end of the conversation, let me ask you this. Do you have, especially after you start doing therapies and stuff, do you have the habit of reading or listening to audiobooks? And if
Yes.
so, what is one book or audiobook that has made an impact on you? Because sometimes books come in different moments of your life, and sometimes there will be like a personal development book, sometimes a business book that helped you with something. But what is a book that comes to your mind as far as like making an impact on you?
Man,
And sometimes it's even one page that you read, like, dude, I don't remember the whole book, but I remember this one page that you
Yes.
got that information and used. That's already worth it, the whole investment.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me see here. There's one. Actually, to be honest, Gustavo, it's probably the first book I ever read in my life. It
Hmm.
was in Portuguese. It was Onze Anéis. It's the 11 Rings.
Gotcha.
I think it was, and
The
funny
Phil
or not,
Jackson.
yes, correct.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was the first book I read ever in my life. I was 20 years old. It was a little before Brown Belt Pan American, where I had the double goal performance.
Hmm.
And I think it changed my mind
I
reading that.
believe.
You know, like you said, books comes and go, and sometimes you read a book in a stage of your life and it doesn't hit you that much. But in
Exactly.
a different stage of your life, it's like a very different experience. And I felt it. But that was my first time being introduced to books, to the habit of reading, and it talked about so many important things. Some of them maybe I was already doing, but not intentionally,
Hmm.
without knowing. Other things I didn't do, and I started doing, and it changed a lot, you know. And like you said, there's a saying that professor was telling me the other day. He was like, imagine a book about mental health. The guy that wrote the book is probably around 60 years old, 70 years old. He lived his whole life, and all the experience that he has is 60 years or 70 years or 50 years, doesn't matter. It's in the book that you can finish and you can possibly absorb all the knowledge that he spent 60 years in eight
Yep.
hours, in 6 hours. Now, man, that's life changing. It can be life changing. And when professor told me that, I was like, man, I gotta start reading with more frequency. I gotta make a habit of reading. And
Uh,
ever since, one book that I'm finishing right now is the subtle art of not giving a fuck. It's a
yeah.
book. I got it as a gift, so I'm reading it right now. It's pretty nice. I'm learning a lot.
Cool. Actually, I'm gonna give my
Do you have any recommendation? What about yours? I wanna know yours. What was
well,
like a book that it was like transforming for you
the name is Psycho Cybernetics. It's a weird name. This is like originally from maybe the 60s or so.
in
They
English,
say, yeah, well, they have in Portuguese
in
too.
Portuguese as well?
Yeah, I gotta see what cibernética, alguma coisa. I don't know exactly the title in Portuguese, but a friend of mine is a he was an NFL player, and I remember he talking with me about this and about this book and said, I wish I had read this. This was introduced at the beginning of my career. And that, like everything that I do, the BJJ mental coach, it's everything aligned with that, which is a lot about the self-image, the picture that you design in your mind for everything that you learn in your life from growing up, from people who are around you, your influences. You start to adopt, your good, not so good patterns. You just became and you form your self-image. You mentioned at one point of the conversation, sometimes without even questioning certain thought process that's like, oh, it's probably that's how it is. And what about like what if it's not how it
What
is?
if it's not? Yeah.
You've been telling your story to yourself this whole time. So it's heavily based on that, the self image, and a strong pillar for everything I do, the concept of the BJJ mental coach. And I always reference them because it's a most man, a lot of, let's say, a lot of the high level personal development guys, I mean, they use that as a reference. So I have the printed version, and I'll put in the link of the description. I'll put the link there, and it's that's the one that usually I recommend to people. And like you said,
I'm
depending on
gonna
always in
read
a moment, that you get, but this one, that's the made the biggest impact. And now I always try to listen to a few different things, different topics or whatnot. But I'm big into personal development, and and sometimes in podcasts, and then just try to get information. There's man, there's so much information out there now, but at the same time, it's not just consuming the information, but it's like consuming and can I actually utilize
Mhm.
this concept that I learned? There's a concept in
It's the awareness and action that you mentioned earlier.
yeah, yeah, and there's a difference. There's a concept of the warrior of the mind and the librarian of the mind. The librarian of the mind is the guy that reads the whole library. He reads everything. He knows all the content. He's always reading next book, next book, next book, but he's not taking action in anything that he's doing. And you have the warrior of the mind that is learning, and I'm like, let me try to use some of that stuff and putting yourself out in the arena, not just reading and keeping the information. It's just entertainment. You're just entertaining yourself. That's
Mhm.
about it. There's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want. But if you do want transformation, yeah, you're gonna have to take the action of like pick whatever makes sense to you and work on it. I was gonna say my 2 cents. We're recording this in April of 2025, and I'm about to in a couple months. Probably I'm putting about July 1st. I'm be releasing my second book, and it's called Inner Discovery for Outer Success. The reason why I remember this is because you mentioned about it's 50 years of my life there,
Mhm.
35 years of jujitsu, of a lot of the lessons, the frustrations and successes, or were not, everything related to competition. So Inner Discovery for Outer Success, 10 rules to integrate authenticity and performance in jujitsu and beyond. Meaning, when I talk about authenticity, it's about being yourself on the mat. Like I said, not always your best is going to be enough to win, but you're
Mhm.
gonna hit your head on the pillow and say, like, dude, that was me there. The guy won because he won. I made a technical mistake or whatever happened, but it was me. So I always that's what I do my best to stimulate and inspire people to just be you. Try to be the best, the same version that you are at the academy, even a little bit more with a little more intensity, even at the competition. And also, so we have 10 rules from the moment that you decided that you want to compete to the moment you walk off the mat. So it's
Mhm.
before, during, and after. And the last few chapters are how can you utilize those 10 lessons in your personal professional life. That is like the trick. All the lessons, everything that you've been sharing, that's stuff that you use in your life. And the very first one is discover your why. Why you're doing what you're doing. We talk about emotional intelligence, and one of the pillars is the self motivation, the intrinsic motivation and the extrinsic motivation. You have the extrinsic motivation that you want to make a living with jujitsu. That's
Mhm.
extrinsic. You want to win, you want to have a title, and but you have the intrinsic of the internal desire that, like, dude, I really want this. This is why it's important to me. And of course, the result's a consequence of your work. So having that understanding when I was younger, I wasn't. In the 90s, there was everything was rivalry and we gotta beat those guys. 100% ego, full blast.
Mhm.
And I was too worried about many times playing not to lose than playing to win. Doing what I have to do to win because I'm too concerned if I'm going to win or lose. I don't go out of my comfort zone. I just mean there are times that you need to play strategy, absolutely, of course. But now, when you consistently not being yourself because of it, that might be a problem, and it's not sustainable. Just thinking of I have to win, I need this, I want my academy. No, no,
Yeah.
no. This is all consequence. Like really, the internal, like you said, your motivation to get better in training, that needs to be very strong, and then is going to reflect on whatever extrinsic motivations you have. So I talk about all that, and then with life examples of my biography in a way, anything that is related to the context of the book. I'm not just telling a story just for the hell of it. And at the same time, study cases of many competitors and fighters, MMA, jiu-jitsu that I have helped in some way and have like a success story. And then we talk about the mental and stuff. So it's a combination of mental skills training with sports, personal development, and emotional intelligence. And we have a audiobook version too. And I feel that is something new for the community. I don't know if you have something like that that I remember of a book, or sometimes it's someone that didn't have a chance to at least experience high level. I never won a black belt adult world champion or anything like that. But I had my moments. I had my, my journey, and as a teacher, as a event promoter, as a student, as a competitor, and put in all of that. And I know that will make a big impact on the community, because more and more, like I said, people talking more about the mental. It's so frustrating, many guys that you travel, man, you go all the way to,
Mhm.
guys compete at the Master Worlds, travel, invest, and get at the time. They're like so worried about they're gonna win, lose, and want to disappoint the family. They
Yeah,
freeze, and then they go back like just frustrated, and
and
many
but
times in a vicious cycle that I've been before. Like, last time I lost, this time I have to win. So now I'm pressuring myself even more instead of think of what matters, which is the execution. All
Mhm.
that matters, doesn't matter who is watching, who is there, or whatever. When it comes down to what matters is who is going to execute the most effective way. And if you're not ready mentally, it's not going to happen.
You said it all. Yeah.
Yeah. So to wrap up, anything wanted to share anything? I'm going to share your profile, Instagram, and stuff like that. Any shout out or sponsors or anything, and we're good.
Yeah, no, just want to thank you for the opportunity. Like I told you even before during the message, I was looking forward to be here in the podcast and share a little bit of my story, but even more to learn. Like you said, like you have your whole experience as an athlete, professor, event promoter, and everything. I'm only 25. I have my experiences, but I'm only
Yeah.
25. At the end of the day, I haven't lived much. So I like being around people who are more experienced and try to learn from them. Because that's how I got to this point. I had my parents guiding me up until I was 15, 16. But ever since I left home, I didn't really have a mentor. My mentors were everyone I would talk to and I'll try to learn from.
Mm-hmm.
Professors and these type of conversations and books and podcasts, audiobook. So I really appreciate your time and man, it was a hell of a time. I learned a lot.
Cool.
And yeah, I'm excited
Awesome.
there. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Andy. Just hold there for a second for everyone. You take care. If you have any suggestions or anything, send me a message at Gustavo Dantas at Gustavo Dantas BJJ. Us.
Valeu.